Hello everyone and welcome. In the video today, I'm going to be showing you how to make your own homemade synthetic pads that can be used on clarinet, saxophone, or bassoon, or really any other woodwind instrument that uses a traditional style of pad. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, first, you're going to need to gather your materials. The three materials I have are the sealing layer, the support layer, and then the backing. So the sealing layer is essentially just a piece of closed-cell foam. Now this particular type of foam is called neoprene, and it's useful because it's both waterproof and airtight. So this is a 1/32 piece of neoprene that I purchased as part of a larger roll, which you can get for a very reasonable price, and you can buy pretty much a lifetime supply of it at a time, so it's very useful for DIY projects. Next we have our cork layer, which provides a little bit more support to the pad so it's not squishy like some foam pads tend to be. Now this, again, I purchased in a roll and is relatively cheap. I believe the thickness on this is 1/16 of an inch. The last material that we need is our cardstock backing. Now this can be pretty much any piece of cardboard from a cereal box, as long as it's thin. You don't want the corrugated cardboard, which is far too thick for this project. Now these pads are being made for a contrabass clarinet, so they're going to be a bit thicker than what you might find on a standard B-flat clarinet. However, this thickness should work on bass clarinet or saxophone. So in addition to the materials that I mentioned, you'll also need some tools and supplies. The first supply you'll need is contact cement. So the way contact cement works is you apply a thin layer to the materials you want to glue together and then wait 15 minutes for it to dry. Once it's dry, you then simply attach the pieces together and they'll form a nice permanent bond on contact. You'll also need a pair of scissors to cut out some smaller sections of material from your larger pieces that you'll have to order. Now, I like to work with 6 by 8 inch pieces just because it's very easy to manipulate them, and I don't want to use too large pieces because if they're too large, there's a risk of warping, which is undesirable for these pads. Lastly, you'll need some kind of cutter. Now, you can purchase a hole punch in many different sizes, so if you want to go that route, they're a little bit expensive, but you can use them as many times as you want. Now I like to make my own cutters, usually out of something with a thin walled piece of tubing, and then I'll just grind the edge down to make a nice sharp cutting surface. So if you want to save some money, making your own pad cutters out of thin walled tubing is a very good way to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue these together. Alright, so the glue has been drying for 15 minutes, so we're ready to put the two pieces of material together. Now remember, once they touch, they're permanently attached, so you want to make sure you do this right the first time. So what I like to do is I like to start on the corner. I'll just like to place it and then slowly push everything down, making sure that it's very flat. Just want to make sure that it's nice and flat and smooth and even. So you get a nice level surface so that the pad will seal against the tone hole properly. And I just like to press it down just to make sure everything is nice and firmly attached. And now this layer is good. So now I'm just going to do the same thing with the other layer. But I don't want to show you all that again. So with the magic of editing, and the cork is dry. So now we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to take this layer and we're just going to attach it. Then push it flat. And then we're ready to go. So all that's left now is to cut out the desired size of pad that we need. So in order to cut out our pad, we want to take our pad cutter, we want to put it on the location that we want to cut out, and then we want to push down and twist at the same time to cut the material. We don't want to push too hard because then we can shear the edges and then we're going to get uneven cuts. So it's very important to cut the first layer very cleanly so that it looks like a nice, even professional pad. And then once we get through the foam, we can put a little bit more force in there. And then once we get to the cardboard, we might have to put a lot of force because that's a little bit hard to cut. You can also look on the back to see how far you're cutting. So I'm almost through this pad, so I'm just going to go a little bit more. And then you can always break the last layer off. Maybe cut it a little bit more in this case. Okay. So now sometimes the cardboard will tear a little bit like that. However, I want that because I want these pads to be a little bit thinner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little rod or something, or a little screwdriver, punch that out. And that's my pad right there. So now this can be installed in the traditional way by using some kind of hot melt glue or shellac, or if your instrument has screw type pads like my contrabass clarinet, you would want to further punch a smaller hole in the center so that you can put the post through that and then use it to attach the pad to the pad cup. And here's what the pads look like when installed on an instrument. So they actually look very clean and professional when done correctly. You can see a little bit of the cork underneath, however, you mostly see black. So if you want an instrument with black pads, this is a really cheap alternative to more expensive kangaroo leather pads. These pads are held in with a small nut and screw, which is pretty common for LeBlanc contrabass clarinets. However, you can glue these in too. So these work on pretty much any size of pad from large to small. They're a really cheap alternative to more traditional types of pads. And it's a really great DIY project if you have an instrument but don't have a ton of money to put into it. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. All right, thanks for watching.